it is on bare minimum, unfortunately. I know some of you may like it rough or have some sort of kinks on, like skin on skin, but believe me, lubrication is key, especially on the engines. The owner of this Mazda CX5 reached out to me because it has few issues. The one being is the SCBS light constantly coming on, which can be related to the P010 fault code, and also the second one, the oil pressure light coming on the dashboard, even though he said the car had recently the oil change, which was like 3 months ago. So let me open the bonnet, have a look underneath it and check the engine visually, and then connect the scan tool and scan for the fault codes, and then we're going to further assess the car. Also guys, I get asked a lot, where do we get the parts from? And now I'm finally convinced the guy who gives or sells us the parts, so he make a website, and if you buy through my link, Mr. Nice Guy 5, you will get 5% discount. I will leave the link in the description. He sells OEM Mazda parts, but not only Mazda parts, also Honda, Toyota. If he doesn't have a particular part you are after listed on his website, just shoot him a message. He will definitely can get that part for you in no time. Also, is very good with packaging. So yeah, feel free to check out the website. I'll leave the link in the description below. And don't forget to use the discount code in order to get 5% discount. If the car has oil pressure problem, the first thing is we check the oil, especially the level. So we're going to check the dipstick. I'll ask Ben for help, so he cleans it off. And then we are rechecking it. And as you can see, guys, it is on bare minimum, unfortunately, so it is not looking good, to be honest. It does not really look like it is fresh oil, and also it is less. I don't know if it is because they didn't put enough or the engine is consuming the oil, but from the clues what I have here, it may consume or leak oil at least. Why I am saying that? Because here around the EGR valve and the cooler, there's a big puddle of oil, and also on the charge pipe, on the intercooler piping, there is a huge amount of oil. So on the intercooler, which not supposed to be there, obviously. What else we can see? Other than that, the engine looks pretty untouched because original silicone sealant is sticking out from underneath the valve cover, meaning valve cover has never been off. So the clamp on the intake manifold pipe, coolant pipe, the clamp is facing towards the driver. So it suggests that the intake manifold was never taken off. Also, I can see that the drive belt has those cracks, so it needs replacement, and it has old exhaust pressure sensor, which usually needs a replacement. But now let's have a look at the fault codes that I'm going to leave the car, and we're going to have a look at it from underneath. It has two fault codes, the P0101 and the P055F. The first one is related to the mass airflow, which is usually caused by carbon buildup or exhaust camshaft being worn. The second one is related to the oil pressure, but it complains about the specification of the oil pressure, which we are going to have a look at it a bit later. So from underneath, it has two oil leaks, basically on the two sides of the engine. On the gearbox side, the oil is coming pretty much from that intercooler pipe. As you can see, it provides sufficient oil and lubrication to the gearbox. And on the other side, if I am correct, it looks like, because if you can have a look at the seal on the oil pan, it still looks like the factory seal or silicone, so it means it hasn't been removed. So how it is oily here? To me, it looks like it is coming from the front crankshaft seal, which is not quite common or usual to be leaking on these Mazdas. So now I add oil to the engine and I'm going to check the live data. I know some of you may like it rough or have some sort of kinks on, like skin on skin, but believe me, lubrication is key, especially on the engines. They don't really like the metal on metal contact, so you need to make sure it has enough oil in the engine, the sufficient level is maintained. Owning a car It's not only just filling up with fuel and then driving. You need to have some sort of understanding of the engine as well as an owner, and need to make sure at least all the fluids are on level where they should be. Otherwise it can cost you a lot later on. So now I fill it up with oil and I'm going to check the live data. The engine is running, the exhaust or the tailpipe is smoking, and it smells like an oil. The car has 93,000 miles on the clock, and apart from the check engine light, it has the DPF warning light on the dashboard as well. Now let's have a look at few values. The engine oil temp is 41 degrees, which is still not the operating temperature, but the oil pressure is okay so far. However, the exhaust pressure sensor values and the DPF or differential pressure sensor values are a bit off. The exhaust pressure sensor values are low. They are 70 kilopascals instead of 105 or 105 kilopascals, and the differential pressure sensor values are around 1.5 kilopascals instead of 0.3 kilopascals. However, this can be because if the DPF is very close to the region, these numbers can be high. So I'm not too worried about that at the minute. So now let me check the exhaust pressure sensor pipe. So how can I check that? I'll need to press the throttle rapidly or swiftly, and then the numbers should increase also swiftly and then go back to where they should be, to 105, in this case to 70 swiftly as well. To be honest, it seems that the sensor is bad only and the pipe is clean. Now let's have a look at further values. Let's have a look at the DPF. So the accumulation of the PM particulate matter in the DPF is 5.5, which is very close to region. It happens when those numbers reach 6.5 or 7.5 grams per liter. So in this case, the differential pressure sensor values are okay. They are not too high. Let's have a look when it had the last DPF region done. It was 190 kilometers ago, which is not too bad again. So now let's do the final assessment. Now the engine oil is hot enough. Let's have a look at the oil pressure. On idle it is fine. Let's have a look at 2000 RPM, 400 kilopascals. Let's have a look about 3000, 400 kilopascals. So let me say a couple words about it. So now what the interesting bit is, basically we don't have low oil pressure, but we have high oil pressure, which is quite uncommon or unusual on these ones. Usually they have low oil pressure. So if you remember earlier, I've said and showed you as well that the intercooler pipe is oily, and also the front main seal, the crank seal, is oily. So what can be, basically something is overpressurizing the oil system and it's pushing out on through the seals the too much pressure. What can it be? Very likely the turbo, as the tailpipe is smoking and it smells like oil. So what can happen? The turbo is burning oil, and that's why the engine could have or had low oil level as well. How it could have happened? In my theory, in my opinion, the car has fairly huge carbon buildup that ended up in onboard fuel, ending in the DPF or going to the DPF, blocking it, and that causing huge back pressure, and the back pressure is damaging the turbo, and once the turbo is damaged, that's pressurizing the oil system. I'm going to check the turbos, the small and big, for leak and play, but probably they will have both. So from now on I can pretty much tell what it needs. It needs very likely a new turbo, also carbon cleaning. It may have a worn camshaft, we can't tell that until we take off the valve cover, and also it may have oil pressure problems, because the faulty turbo overpressurizing the oil system can be a tricky one, and it may hide the underlying oil pressure problem. I can only tell that once I remove the valve cover and I see any injector blow by and carbon buildup around the injector hose. So it may have it, may not have it, but what it definitely needs, very likely a new turbo, carbon cleaning, and I would say also a DPF cleaning as well. But let me first have a look at the turbos. So I have removed few bits and checked both of the turbos, and unfortunately the big turbine wheel and the small turbine wheel, has play as well. Also, as you can see guys, it is leaking quite a lot of oil, we can agree on that. So the turbo needs replacement. I've spoken with the owner and quoted the job up for him, but unfortunately he is not going to go ahead with the repairs as it is above his budgets, which obviously we can understand. We are talking about a lot of money and also like quite a big job on it. So yeah, thank you guys very much for watching and see you very soon in the next video. Until then, take care and bye bye.